And good afternoon. My name is Ryan Belmore, and I'm the publisher of What's Up Noop. Mr. Frank Prosnitz joins me. Hey, Frank.
How you doing, Ryan?
It has been a little while. We're both getting the cobwebs out a little bit here.
We are. Lots of things have happened. So
yes, but we are in, a little bit more than 3 weeks. We have a primary coming up here in Rhode Island.
Big time. We've got a gubernatorial primary. We've got a congressional primary in District 2. We've got general treasurer primary. We've got a lieutenant governor primary. Other than that, it's inactive.
That's it. Before we get started here, just want to let people know if they have questions, comments, you could drop them in the comments section, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or our website. Drop them in the comments. We'll get to as many as we can if time allows. If not, what I can promise you is we will take your questions, and if they're for us, we'll get a reply back to you. And if they're for our guests, we'll get a reply back for you. So leave your comments. These are interactive. I also just want to make a note, as this is our first gubernatorial. We have invited all the candidates on. So look for more interviews coming up here in the next couple of weeks. The show is yours, Mr. Prosnitz.
Oh, very good. So our first of the candidates is Helena Buonanno Foulkes. She's a former CBS executive, former CEO of Hudson Bay Companies, which is the parent company of Saks Fifth Avenue. A Harvard graduate. She was president of a board at Harvard. Pretty distinguished career. She's the granddaughter of Thomas Dodd and the niece of Chris Dodd, both of whom were senators from Connecticut. So she has the political background. I believe her father was head of the convention Convention Center Authority or Dunkin' Donuts Center. I'm not sure which, but lots of government in the past with her family, and certainly lots of experience in administration. Good morning, Helena. Good afternoon, Helena.
Hi, Frank. Thanks for having me.
Also, good to have you here. Best background today as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So did I get the players correct? Your dad was head of which authority?
Father is the head of the Convention Center Board.
That's what I thought. Okay, excellent. Let's start off a little bit with just the first question. Why are you running for governor?
Frank, hi. Well, thank you so much for having me back on. It's great to be here. And as you alluded to, from my background, I'm born and raised in Rhode Island. I grew up in Providence, the oldest of 5. And I really have been always immersed in, through my family, all that's going on politically. But I spent my career in business. I came back to Rhode Island right after school and started working in a cubicle in Woonsocket at CVS. And over 25 years, I had almost every job you could have and ended up running all of retail. So I had 1,000 people working for me. And when I stepped back from all of that and also experienced what was going on with COVID, I realized that we need change to happen, and change is hard. I think the thing that I'm running against at some level is the notion that things are okay. Maybe it's not so great, but it's Rhode Island and we should be happy with it. And honestly, in the middle of COVID, I just became very concerned about what was happening and the number of women who are not back at work, the number of people who are experiencing extreme levels of economic distress. And so for me, my life has been about creating big change. It's the thing I'm most proud of in my business career. And I talk to a lot of people who say, maybe a fresh set of eyes might be just what we need right now, a new perspective. So I think that I'm running against the status quo, honestly, at some level. And I'm trying to infuse in this conversation real policy ideas that I think are differentiated. One example would be, I think we could be the first state in the whole country that would have zero copays on important life-saving medicines like diabetes, insulin for diabetes, or asthma meds. I also believe very strongly that our education system is dramatically holding our kids back and our economy back. And, I'm running against career politicians who've been in the system for a long time and nothing's ever changed. So there are a whole series of things where I have a sense of urgency around making Rhode Island as great as it should be, because we all say, how how blessed we are to live in such a beautiful state. But I want it to be a state that really lives up to its potential and does.
So I think I lost the last piece.
I know, we went out for a second. So, so really what I'm running for, Frank, is a sense of putting ourselves on a big playing field as a state, not being satisfied with the status quo, thinking about how great we could be in healthcare, how great we could be in education, how strong our economy could be when education's working, when we want businesses to flourish, how important climate is, and yet we've got these aspirations, but no concrete plans in place. So there are a whole bunch of things where I think my business background and my sense of urgency and my desire for big change that really matters to Rhode Islanders brings something really fresh to this race. And I love this state. I would be so honored to serve as governor for the people of Rhode Island.
So as always, I take a look at questions I think about, and I forward you, and then I come up with a whole set of other ones that I think about. And listening to what you're talking about is something that I've thought of a lot, that beyond all of the specifics, what seems to me to be maybe the most important component for anybody running for office, and particularly in our general officer positions, is the ability to leadership.
Exactly.
A crazy notion of mine. I think the world was much better when we had charismatic leaders, when there was a Jack Kennedy or a Dag Hammarskjöld or a Golda Meir, and you can go through a whole litany of those people. We haven't had that kind of caliber on a national level for some time, but it's also very important on a state level. Tell me how, and you've been in a lot of leadership positions. Yeah. Tell me whether I'm off base or whether there's something to that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And by the way, I think that with all of the disarray that's existing right now in the federal government, it's more important than ever that we have amazing governors and leaders at state level. It's one of the reasons that I'm in this race. And, you could think about where we are on choice is a great example of that. Who would have ever thought that women's rights would be taken away after 50 years? And while it's terrific that we codified Roe v. Wade in 2019, we live in a state where if your healthcare coverage is through Medicaid, which by the way is 1/3 of all the people in our state, you don't get access to reproductive health care. So we have all the women in this state who are living in poverty and economic distress, and they don't have access. And so to me, that's leadership. It's about not just saying, well, the legislature didn't want to approve it, so I couldn't get it in. It's saying, no, I'm going to work with all these people and pull them together. But on a more macro level, I'm a student of leadership. I grew up, as I said, from the ground floor of CVS to running the largest business unit and 200,000 people. And I learned so much about leadership from tremendous leaders. And as I always tell my kids too, you have bad bosses in your life and you learn things from your bad bosses too. But I think the thing I really learned was the power of having an amazing team around you, about having a purpose. What is the purpose that pulls us together? About having milestones and timelines and all the things that have to go into actually producing results. And I think probably the thing that is really hard for me to convey, except for a forum like this, so thank you for asking, is I think great leaders not only can articulate and inspire people, but they're really good listeners. And I think one of the things I'm most good at that I learned in my career was listening to people both around me who knew more than I did about the functions they were leading, but especially listening to people in the front line of our stores, going to our stores, talking to people who are both shopping in our stores and working in our stores and asking them, what are we missing? And when you can get people to open up and really talk about their pain points, tremendous creativity can come alive. And to me, that's what leadership is all about. It's about being able to inspire. It's about digging into the details to understand what change needs to happen. And then it's really about holding people accountable to produce results. And that's what's been so inspiring to me as I'm meeting with people all over the state. I talk to people who deal in social services, for example, who are desperate for a real leader. We do not have a real leader in this governor. We need a real leader who's going to dig in to the details and make sure that all the money we're spending, we have a $13 billion budget, really gets to the people in need, and that's what's so inspiring for me as I think about being able to serve the people of Rhode Island.
How do you think Governor McKee and prior to that, Governor Raimondo did taking us through the pandemic?
Well, look, it was an incredibly challenging time. There's been no moment like this in the state. And when I talk to people, it's always easy to Monday morning quarterback. I think these are very hard jobs. I think the thing that Governor Raimondo did best was she was on air, on TV often. People got a sense of comfort for that. She was listening, she was working, she was reaching out. There were a lot of people who felt that they could have a voice. Not to say everyone was happy, but I think her sense of urgency around that was really most excellent. I'm a little bit more critical, quite honestly, of Governor McKee because I think he inherited many good things from Governor Raimondo that he's taking credit for right now. And I also believe that we have missed an opportunity with the billions of dollars that have come our way to actually produce the kind of results that we should. And I'll give you a couple concrete examples. We know now that we know the education system is broken in this state coming out of COVID. 33% of our kids passed their grade level reading and 20% in math. And every city and town, if you add them all up, received about $400 million from the federal government to make sure that they were serving our children. You may have seen this week, a report just came out that in every state where they've been able to find data, every city, less than 10% of that money has actually been put to work for the kids. In Providence, it's 5% of the money. So to me, that's what leadership is. It's to say this money is coming in. My job as governor is really to make sure that that money gets put to use. There are other examples like this. And look, I respect the governor. I think he has a good heart and has tried very hard. I just think this is a level of leadership that is way beyond what he's ever done in his life.
When you look at your priorities, if you are elected governor, what are your top 3 priorities?
Mm-hmm. Education is my number 1 priority. I talk about it a lot because I think it is a fundamental moral right for our children. I think it's also a huge economic opportunity for us. And just a little story on that, Frank, at my time at CBS, I recruited hundreds and hundreds of people to come work for me. And the lion's share, I want to say maybe 90% of those people over my career ended up buying homes in Massachusetts and driving 20, 30 minutes to work for just one reason: great public schools. And Massachusetts has been a model in the last 25 years and Rhode Island has not. So I have a lot of specifics on my plan. As you know, you and I've spoken about this. It's all on my website. But the thing that I will just highlight is that I am the only person in this race who said, I'll hold myself accountable. If I don't get our kids' scores back above where they were before COVID, I will not run for office again. And it's that important to me. So that's number 1. Oh, you want to stop there?
Yeah. I have a question on education, and then I want to go on to the others. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about the city of Providence, in which the state took over the city. It didn't. How do we fix Providence?
From an education perspective, look,
we
have not delivered on what we should be delivering on for the city of Providence. And I think this example of 5% of the money being spent is a classic example of that. I mean, this is now a city school department that's being run by the state, by the governor. He is ultimately accountable. We have kids. I mean, we talk about COVID learning loss. We have had, think about all the kids this summer who had an opportunity to go to some sort of summer learning, summer enrichment. All the money was there and none of it was spent. That is a massive disconnect. So I believe as governor, my job is to put the resources, the focus in place for Providence to succeed and ultimately hand it back, but not do so until we've really got a system that is effective for our children. There are a lot of things that go into that.
Go on to the other priorities.
Well, another big one is the economy and making sure that we have an economic engine that can propel us and allow us to have the resources to invest in all the social services we need. So two ideas within there. One is investing in the blue ocean economy. We have 400 miles of ocean, and we have this incredible opportunity with URI School of Oceanography, the Naval War College, which is the #1 recipient of U.S. federal dollars on underwater research. we could make Rhode Island the leader in a blue ocean economy. We were the first in wind. So I'm proposing a bond similar to what Massachusetts did 15 years ago, and pulling together government, business, universities to say, how are we the leader here in attracting talent that wants to start businesses around the blue ocean, and making sure that we reinvest some of these dollars in climate. There's a lot we could do to be on the leading edge, and I'm really excited about that. In a very different way, but connected for the economy, is making sure that the thousands and thousands of small businesses in this state can thrive. And there, what I really hear from small businesses is, Helena, please, we need to get rid of the red tape and bureaucracy. And this is, another example, Frank, of what I said before about being okay with mediocrity. It's not okay when I meet a person who owns 3 restaurants and he says to me, Helena, when I opened my second restaurant in Pawtucket, I had to go to 13 different websites and locations just to get all the paperwork and permits. And yet when I go to Worcester, Mass to open a restaurant, there's a concierge service, one-stop shop. And to me, that's the kind of challenge the governor can drive. We could make real change for small businesses so that we free them up from the bureaucracy to focus on serving people. And the reason I think that matters for the people of Rhode Island is we want all of these employers to be building great jobs and futures for the people of Rhode Island. So that's my second, very
small businesses, of course, are probably our biggest employer overall. And just an aside, when I was editor of the Business News, I would often editorialize on how we needed a concierge service.
Oh, you did?
Because it's the bureaucracy is absurd because we have different rules for different towns, and
right.
and we have vendors who are having to file multiple times when they should only have to file once.
Exactly.
To be able to do their work.
The stories that I hear are overwhelming, and I think I bring my business experience from CVS to say I know how to break down silos. I know how to make things work, because that's what I had to do in my career. I would also highlight, a very important difference in this race between me and Nellie Gorbea is that she's proposed raising taxes on small businesses. I think it's a big mistake to think about that as we head into a recession. I think the last thing we need to be doing, especially coming out of a climate where we had a $900 million surplus, is proposing that we raise taxes on small businesses. So I think it's a very important point of distinction between us.
And your third priority?
My third priority is affordability, because people are feeling priced out of this state, and the pocketbook issues are enormous. I think we have fallen down in serving the people of Rhode Island and the worries that they have every single day. So I proposed using some of the $900 million surplus for a middle-class tax cut, and that would have been $500 for anyone making $100,000 or less. That's the way to put real money back in people's wallets, so as they're dealing with gas prices, grocery prices, they have some security there. I also really believe that we've got to increase supply of housing. We're 20,000 units short. And just last night I was out knocking on doors in Providence in a neighborhood where, people were talking about, one woman said to me, I'd love to buy a house. She wanted to be near her mother, but the price of housing had gotten so out of control, never mind the price of rents. And another one of my proposals is to make sure that we encourage people to live in multi-unit housing. And so a part of my proposal there is that we have a tax cut for people living in multi-unit housing as a way to help them through all these massive rent increases that they're experiencing. But I've got a lot of specifics on it. One of my frustrations when I hear politicians talk about these issues is they kind of talk in platitudes. And so, Frank, I would encourage people to go to my website, because you'll see a lot of specifics. I'll give you 2 examples of things I think we could do quickly to increase supply of housing. One is we could adopt accessory dwelling units. California has this. It would allow people to, let's say, build an apartment on top of their garage or in their garage, move into the smaller unit and be able to rent out the bigger house. Many older people love to do this as a way to put money back in their wallets, but it also obviously increases supply pretty quickly. Another specific idea is to make sure that for any home that was built before 1980, we would allow it to be converted to multi-unit housing. That's another way to increase supply quickly. I have
So-
others, but I'm just trying to give
Accessory dwelling units, as I understand it, it passed the legislature this year. I don't know whether or not the governor signed it, but one of the things that I think it doesn't do is it leaves actual implementation to the cities and towns. So
That's exactly right. It doesn't exist in every community. You're exactly right. The last area around affordability, I think, is really critical, and I hear this from people every single day, and it's the price of prescription drugs. And I happen to know a lot about this. In my career, I'm very proud of some of the things I did. I for example, was able to take the EpiPen, which at the time cost $600, and a lot of families were stressed out about being able to afford EpiPens for their children who had allergies. And we found an alternative in the market that no one else had found, and we're able to offer it to consumers at $99. So I tried to take my private sector experience and say, what could I do as governor that would be different than what every Democrat or Republican has ever thought about? And therein lies this proposal, which I think would be the first in the nation, for zero copays on insulin, asthma, and then we would add more medicine. But the thing that is unique about it, Frank, is, as I said, I'm leveraging my private sector experience to know that when we keep people on their medicines, because a big reason people don't take their meds is they can't afford them, what we do is we keep them out of the hospital a couple years down the road. So this is a proposal that would allow us to lean into the zero copay and reap the rewards as a state when those health benefits start to come in the following years. And the money we could keep reinvesting in more drugs every couple of years to add to this pipeline of the number of drugs that could be zero copay.
Ryan, you might want to unmute yourself, Ryan.
I definitely do. That's what you do when you take double precautions to make sure you don't make noise.
Right.
Sheila, on that note, asks, who will pay for the copays?
Yeah. So what I'm proposing, and it's on my website, Sheila, thank you for asking. You can go see the details. So for the first couple of years, it would be the state paying for this. It would be $15 million to start with diabetes. And then what you'll see over time, though, Sheila, is it becomes self-funding, because the $15 that we're investing every year, over time, we're reaping the rewards of those health savings down the road, and we're getting the benefits as state taxpayers from the health savings later. And then we take those savings and then we reinvest in new drugs. So that's why I think it's so breakthrough. It's something that has never been done before, because I don't think we've had a leader who really understands this part of the healthcare system. And so I'm really excited about it. I would love to make Rhode Island the first in the country. And I think we could be doing so much more on a global basis to make Rhode Island a really excellent state as it relates to healthcare.
I mean, I wanted to stay on healthcare a little bit. And when I look at the healthcare system, it looks fairly bleak to me. We've had a revolving door when it comes to directors for health in Rhode Island. We've had the presidents of both of our major systems, Lifespan and Care New England, announce that they're resigning. I'm not sure of the dates with that. We've had a failed merger between Lifespan and Care New England, and that, very frankly, I think the initial shift away from partners in Boston had more to do with politics than it had to do with reality. Mm-hmm. And we've also seen a growth of our community health centers, which can actually take some of the pressure off of our hospitals. How do we fix this? Yeah,
we can fix this, Frank, and it's complicated, but it's also, remember, we only have 1.1 million people in this state. So I know we're going to run out of time. I'd love people to look on my website. We have to do a few things. We have to get more care happening locally in the community, to your point. I propose increasing the number of community centers where people could get access to healthcare, even using some of our schools where people could get tested. They could get access to people that they trust on a very local level. You know, if we, in this state, there are probably close to 30% of people in this state have diabetes. Most of them don't know it. So if we can get access to more specific testing, we can keep them healthier. I do think we need a governor who's going to look at all the hospital systems and ask ourselves, what's a viable model for the future? I had proposed that I was supporting the merger of the two hospital systems because I was very worried that if we didn't, we were going to have Harvard coming down from the north and Yale coming up from the south, or a private equity firm coming in and buying up pieces of this and not have control over it. And I do think that if we could have gotten the merger to happen, we would have eliminated a lot of the overhead in IT and finance and been able to put it back in the people serving patients. There's also a massive shortage of nurses, and I have ideas on how to expand the number of nurses in our state, nurses that can really reflect the communities that they're serving. So that looks like expanding the Rhode Island Promise program and many other things we could do. All of this requires guardrails. Look, the merger, I think, it's complicated, but if we put the right guardrails in place and have these hard conversations, I do think we can move the needle. And it's a small enough state, as I said, where I think we could stand out. We really need to be a place where the people who live in this state are thriving, and it is not happening today.
Helena, we have about 3 minutes left, so I want to ask you, what are the things that you would like to touch on in these last couple of minutes?
Well, thank you. This has gone by so fast. I'm thinking, yes, this has been really fun.
It's the refreshments we serve.
It was really delightful. Thank you for that. I think the thing I'd like to just say, maybe as we close, because I don't think we've missed topics, Frank, but I want to go back to what you said at the beginning about leadership. And I think what I really offer that the other candidates do not is a level of leadership that's critical for this state. As I mentioned, I led 200,000 people. I had an $80 billion budget. I know how to manage at scale. I know one of the most important things you have to do as a leader is have the absolute best talent around you. I do not think this governor's been able to attract good talent at all. We've seen a brain drain. We have massive number of open positions at the top. And unless you have great leaders in those positions, you can't hold those teams accountable for serving the people of Rhode Island. One simple example is we were the only state in the country where SNAP benefits declined during COVID. And that only happened for one reason. It happened because the offices were closed. And if you wanted to call in, it took you 90 minutes to speak to a person. That's leadership. I know how to do that. I'd love to bring the experience that I have from my business background and my love for Rhode Island, because I've lived here almost my whole life, and really make a difference. And at the end of the day, as I've said in education, if I don't fix those schools and elevate our kids' test scores, I won't run again. And I say that because unless you can hold the governor accountable, we're never going to produce results. And that's the thing that has worried me the most on this journey is watching politicians who speak in platitudes but don't actually have specific ideas and aren't willing to hold themselves accountable.
Well, that's a whole lot of stuff. I'll ask one last question since we have a minute left. And I know there are people saying, well, why don't you ask her about the polls? Okay. And what's your quick take on the latest poll?
I'm excited. Look, we had a poll of 400 people and I'm still in the hunt. And there are a massive number of people who are undecided. Even the people who think they're with someone, 42% of them say they're willing to switch. And we have incredible momentum. We have incredible energy. And I definitely have the resources to go all the way to the end. And I know when I speak to people, when I'm running against these career politicians and they can compare them to a fresh face like me, they get really excited. So I'm going to work as hard as we all can in the next 3 weeks to get this message out. And I do think it really resonates. So I'm excited.
Well, that brings us close to the end of time. Ryan, you have anything you want to add?
I did, but I don't want to take up any more time. One of the things I'm surprised by, and maybe this will be a comment, and your answer will be, of course, how many people still bring up the lack of communication between Governor Raimondo and Lieutenant Governor McKee during the COVID-19 pandemic, the biggest pandemic of our lives. How many people still bring that up to me is just amazing. I imagine that you would make sure that there was communication between anybody.
This is what leadership's about, right? It's pulling, and I can't wait to do this. Whoever is in whatever office they're in, they're going to be part of my team. We come together as a team and we work on behalf of Rhode Islanders. That's why we're sent to serve, and I would love to be able to do that.
Excellent. Well, we will. Everybody gets to participate in the poll, otherwise known as a primary election, in just 3 weeks.
September 13th, I believe.
Yes, September 13th.
Please vote. It's very, very important. It's a critical moment for our state.
Well, thank you for your time. And,
Helena, thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right. And Frank, that is one of a couple coming up here.
Well, we have Nellie Gorbea scheduled, and we have Louis Daniel Munoz scheduled. We have yet to hear from Matt Brown. Reached out to him several times, and he's got the opportunity. And I don't believe, and I have to go back on some of my emails, that I had anything definitive from the governor. And we'll reach out one more time. But these are important.
Preparing an email with all of this information, which will be going out to What's Up Noob subscribers here in just a couple minutes. So make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. Tuesday, August 23rd at 3 p.m., we'll chat with Munoz. And on Monday, August 29th at 3 p.m., we'll be chatting with Nellie Gorbea. So sign up for our newsletter. We'll let you know ahead of time. Of course, this one kind of snuck up on us, but we will be asking via our newsletter for questions as well. So get your questions for all the candidates.
Yeah. And vote smart. Listen and read, listen, and when you go into the voting booth, vote because it's somebody that you believe represents your viewpoints.
And for anybody involved in any of the campaigns out there, more often than you would imagine, people have told me after we do these series that they go and they watch every single one of them before they vote. They did it in the last election where we interviewed 400 candidates for.
I thought it felt like more than that.
For Newport City Council and school committee. People watch these. We'll get them all in one story once we have a couple of them going here. They're 30 minutes each, and hopefully they give you an insight into who to vote for.
Excellent.
All right, Mr. Prosnitz, thank you.
Well, thank you, Ryan.
If you missed any portion of this interview, you can watch it on whatsupnuke.com, on our Facebook page. Please share it with anybody in Rhode Island who is voting. This one, as well as all of the other candidates. All right, Mr. Prosnitz.
All right, you have a good day, Ryan.
Good to see you. Time to get you a new hat, my friend.
Yeah, take care.
All right. On behalf of Frank Prosnitz, myself, all of us here at What's Up Noop, I want to thank Helena for joining us today. For more information on her campaign, you can see the website right there at the bottom. Again, this video will be able to be watched and shared on our website. Thanks for watching.